Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of the football betting series here on YouTube, FA Cup edition. This episode comes with a brief disclaimer that just after the international break, sides normally struggle to find their feet once again and fire on all cylinders coming into their next game. I'm going to be backing each of my selections in today's episode with a half stake, and that's how I'm going to gamble responsibly this week. If you think I'm talking some sense, please drop a like down below and subscribe to the channel for more content. Without further ado, let's get into it. Our first pick sees Preston playing host to Aston Villa. And Preston, they shocked a few neutrals in the manner of their dominant win over Burnley in the round of 16. Ex-Burnley player Robbie Brady got Preston off the mark with his stunning free-kick goal. Just before the interval, Osmajic doubled their advantage, with Will Keane finishing off the tie with goal number 3. Taking a look at the stats on the balance of play, this was a fairly even game. However, Preston's 4 big chances to Burnley's 0 really shows the difference in quality when it came to the final third. Preston have reached this stage of the competition, entering in the third round of the FA Cup, as they were drawn against League 1 Charlton. An Osmajic brace sealed the 2-1 win back in January, and then next up came the visit of League 1 Wycombe Wanderers. Preston edged the tie on penalties after a goalless 120 minutes. When we take everything into account with their cup run, it has been a fairly comfortable draw for the North End. With Burnley representing the biggest challenge for them to overcome, they're going to have to step their game up once again in order to better Premier League opposition. Speaking of which, they host an Aston Villa side who bested Cardiff City in their last round of the FA Cup. A Marco Asensio brace settled the matter in a 2-0 win for Aston Villa, but it could have been a lot more. Taking a look at the stats, Villa generated 25 shots, 10 of which were on target, and 5 big chances across the game. In all honesty, I think Cardiff would have been pretty happy to escape Villa Park with just the 2-0 loss. Prior to this game, Aston Villa were faced with slightly harder opposition in their cup run this year. They entered the third round and were drawn against fellow Premier League side West Ham, and they found themselves behind after just 9 minutes. However, thanks to a quick-fire 1-2 from Onana and Morgan Rogers, Villa turned the tie on its head and progressed into the next round. The fourth round saw them drawn against Tottenham Hotspurs, with Jacob Ramsey wasting no time, scoring in the very first minute of that match. Morgan Rogers then netted in the second half to double the advantage for Villa, with Tell's consolation goal in stoppage time coming a little too late to rescue Spurs. When we take a look at the head-to-head record, these sides haven't faced off since the 2017-2018 Championship season. So, take what you want from Aston Villa's 5-game unbeaten run over Preston, but pay mind to the fact that only John McGinn remains from the Villa side, and only Ryan Ledson and Jordan Storey remains from the Preston North End side. As such, I find it pretty hard to read into form for this match. My prediction for today's game is that Aston Villa have recovered from a poor spell in February, winning each of their last 4 competitive fixtures, so you have to fancy them coming into this game. On the other hand, Preston have won just 1 of their last 4 competitive games, and only 1 of their last 7 league matches prior to this match, so I find it really hard to see them being able to pull off the upset here. As such, I'm going to back Aston Villa to win within 90 minutes for a half stake here in bet number 1. Our second selection is the All-Premier League encounter, and it sees Bournemouth playing host to Manchester City. Bournemouth, they hosted Wolves in the previous round, with Evan Nilsson putting the Cherries ahead after half an hour, before Cunha levelled the scores up in the second half on the hour mark. Despite Bournemouth being the side in the ascendancy for much of the game, they just couldn't find that second goal. They did manage to force 8 saves from Wolves goalkeeper Sam Johnston. With the scores level at 1-1 after extra time, the tie was settled by a penalty shootout, Bournemouth winning out by 5-4. In terms of their cup run, as with all Premier League sides, Bournemouth entered the competition in the third round. They faced a West Brom side who were struggling for form at the turn of the year, and as such the Cherries had no issues with this game, winning by 5-1 in emphatic fashion. Next up was the game against Everton at Goodison Park. Not an easy prospect, but Bournemouth did manage to get past this fixture as well in order to reach the round of 16. They host a Manchester City side who were given quite the scare when Talaverov put Plymouth ahead after 38 minutes with the first shot of the match. However, this lead would not last quite until half-time, with Nico O'Reilly getting the equaliser just before the interval. Guardiola must have lit a fire under Manchester City during the interval, as they really stepped up their game in the second half to score 2 more goals thanks to Nico O'Reilly once again and Kevin De Bruyne in stoppage time. Taking a look at the numbers, it's pretty obvious to see that there was only going to be one winner here. Manchester City had almost 3/4 of the possession, and they outshot Plymouth by 29-1 and created 10 big chances in the game. This result continued a unbelievably easy route to the quarter-final for Manchester City. They entered the competition in the third round as they were drawn against League 2 Salford. They won 8-0 thanks to Doku and Grealish's brace and McAtee's hat-trick as well to get their campaign off to the perfect start. Next up, they were drawn up against Leyton Orient of League 1, and despite going a goal behind, Manchester City did battle back to win 2-1, with Kevin De Bruyne scoring the winner 10 minutes from time. Then came the match against the side at the bottom of the Championship in Plymouth, and when you consider these three fixtures, cup runs don't really come much easier for a Big Six side in the Premier League. When we take a look at the head-to-head record, the last encounter between Bournemouth and Manchester City took place in early November. The Cherries picked up a 2-1 win with goals from Semyeno and Evan Nilsson to put them 2-0 up after 64 minutes. Vardiol pegged one back for the Citizens in the 82nd minute, but they couldn't push on to find a second to secure a point in this match. That particular result broke a 15-game winning streak for Manchester City over Bournemouth, dating all the way back to October of 2015. My prediction for today's game is that Manchester City are still at 6s and 7s, and they're very vulnerable defensively, and this will give Bournemouth a lot of confidence to really lay into one of the big boys. As such, I think that both sides will register in this one, so I'm going to look at both teams to score. Bournemouth have seen both teams to score in each of the last 4 competitive fixtures and in 2 of their last 3 FA Cup matches, whereas Manchester City, they have seen both teams to score in 4 of their last 6 away games, and both teams to score in 2 of their last 3 FA Cup matches as well. When we take a look at the head-to-head record, 3 of the last 4 encounters straight up and 3 of the last 4 games at the Vitality Stadium have seen both teams to score. So I'm going to back both teams to score here for a half stake in bet number 2. Our third and final selection in today's episode is a London derby, and it sees Fulham playing host to Crystal Palace. Fulham, they bested Manchester United in the previous round as Calvin Bassey handed the Cottagers a lead on the stroke of half-time, just before Bruno Fernandes levelled things up for the Red Devils in the second half. 1-1 would be the final score after 90 and 120 minutes, so the tie was settled on penalties. Fulham were perfect from the spot and they won 4-3 as Lindelof and Xerxes missed Manchester United's final 2 penalties, Fulham progressing to the quarter-final stage. In terms of form for the FA Cup, it has been a pretty simple run for Fulham to this point in the competition. They started their FA Cup campaign against Watford, winning in comfortable style by 4-1 in a match in which they dominated from start to finish. Next up in round 4 was League 1 Wigan. Rodrigo Munez's brace proved to be decisive here in Fulham's 2-1 win on the road. Then came the Manchester United result, so it's not been the hardest run in the world for Fulham by any stretch of the imagination. They host a Crystal Palace side who managed to get the better of Millwall in a South London derby last round. With the Eagles dominating on every major win predictor statistic, the 3-1 scoreline was well deserved in the end. The only spot of controversy in the match came when Millwall's goalkeeper Liam Roberts kicked Jean-Philippe Mateta in the face whilst challenging for the ball. The French striker was pulled off immediately and hasn't played for the Eagles since. It remains to be seen as to whether he will play the match against Fulham in this round of the FA Cup. In terms of form, it's been a pretty simple route for the quarter-final for Crystal Palace, and most neutrals would have expected them to get past their oppositions. In round 3, they were drawn against Stockport, and there was no shock at all in the 1-0 win for Crystal Palace, and then they travelled away to Doncaster and picked up a 2-0 win on the road. No shocks and pretty simple for Crystal Palace to reach the quarter-finals. When we take a look at the head-to-head results, Crystal Palace won the last encounter between these sides 2-0 away from home. Stepping back and taking a look at some wider form, Fulham won the previous encounter before that by 2-0. That was back in November, and each of the 3 matches before then were draws, so there's not really anything to separate these 2 sides. My prediction for today's game is that as both sides return from the international break and Crystal Palace are still potentially without their main striker, I do think we're looking at a low-scoring game today. Fulham have seen under 2.5 goals in 3 of their last 4 home matches in the Premier League, but the FA Cup has seen under 2.5 in just 1 of their last 3 games. Whereas Crystal Palace, they've seen under 2.5 goals in each of their last 3 away games and in 2 of their last 3 FA Cup games as well. When we take a look at the head-to-head record, each of the last 4 matches between these sides has seen under 2.5 goals, and 4 of the last 5 matches at Craven Cottage have seen under 2.5 goals scored as well. Therefore, I'm going to take under 2.5 goals for a half stake in the final bet of today's episode. So there we have it, 3 picks in today's episode, but at the time of recording, the odds are not live yet. So what I'll do is I'll put a pinned comment with the updated odds down below. However, just for clarity, I'm going to run through the matches. Fulham versus Crystal Palace, we're taking under 2.5 goals in that game. On the 30th, we have Preston versus Aston Villa. We're backing Aston Villa as the away side to pick up the win there. And on the South Coast, Bournemouth play host to Man City. We're backing both teams to score. All 3 of these games are half stakes because of the unpredictability of the FA Cup and the return from international break. If you have made it to this point in the video, please drop a like down below and subscribe to the channel for more content. And as always, have yourself a lovely day.